My wife left me for my best friend. Chapter 1. I guess I should say STBXW and EX best friend. Just typing that hurts. Everything hurts. I'm Eric 28M, a full-grown man, and I have cried more this last week than I think I have my whole life combined. I am so miserable. My best friend, Charles 28M, and I have been friends since we were 8 years old. We were on all the same sports teams, each our parents basically consider the other family. I was invited on every one of his family vacations and vice versa. We graduated high school together in 2014 and were roommates all through college. He was the best man in my wedding. God, it hurts so much. As painful as this is, losing my wife, Moira 27F, is even worse. She was my everything. We met 7 years ago, started dating shortly after, have been married for 4.5 years now. I keep running through my mind. How did I lose her? What did I do wrong? I haven't let myself go. I plan dates and vacations. We are doing well financially. We have little fights but nothing big, and we always make up and do better going forward. I'm willing to say I'm sorry. I learn from our conversations. I listen. We have a healthy and active sex life. We split the work around the house. I just don't know how this can happen. I'm hunting for reasons and I can't find them. I'm so lost. Maybe I'm blind to my own faults. I wish he would have talked to me. It's so painful to say out loud what has transpired. I'm sitting here now trying to type it out. But it's hard with the tears rolling down my face. 2 months ago, Charles' longtime girlfriend ended their relationship. He took it really hard. Moira and I have been doing our best to cheer him up. In fact, a week after their breakup, Moira took him out to coffee to just let him get a woman's perspective while he vented. When she came back home after, she was noticeably mad and kind of ranting about Charles' ex. She was saying things like, that woman never deserved him. He's a catch, and she will regret it. And so on. We were all close. Charles and Moira were good friends too. I felt the same as she did and chalked it up to just her being protective. Over the next week, she was on her phone a lot. When I asked who, she would tell me she was messaging Charles, giving him a little pick-me-up. I thought nothing of it really. Then over the last 7 or 8 weeks, she started running more errands, going to meet friends for coffee or lunch more often. Charles was also acting a little odd. I was trying to be there for him, especially early on. I would invite him over or just text to see how he was doing. Over the weeks his messages back got shorter, with more time between. He came over less and less. I assumed he was just coping in his own way. This last Tuesday, I was on my way home from work when Charles texted asking me to stop by. I told him I'd be right there. I was excited because I thought he was back and just wanted to hang out or work on something together. I arrived and tried to make some references to our inside jokes. I laughed a little, but he just smirked and it looked like he had tear form in his eye. He motioned for me to follow him into the living room. Moira, my wife, was sitting on the couch. When I entered the room, she burst into tears. I immediately went to comfort her, thinking something bad had happened. Like someone had died. Before I could get to her, Charles said, "Eric, wait." Moira at the same time put her hand up as if giving the signal to stop. Charles let a tear fall down his face and said, "I am so sorry, I don't know how to say this. Moira and I have fallen in love." I felt the color run from me, my heart actually physically hurt. I wasn't sure if I was hearing this correct. Moira just started repeating, "I am so sorry." The two of them were both just apologizing profusely. Then they started. "We know it is wrong, we know it's not fair, but we are in love, and we can't deny it. We didn't mean for this to happen, but it did. We still care for you. We still love you, you don't deserve this. We regret what has happened, but we want to be together." Everything was we. The room was spinning, I was having a full-blown panic attack. It felt like dying. I started begging them to tell this was a prank, a joke. "Please, I don't care if you're filming this, I don't care if you share it to the world. Just please let this be fake, please. I was hysterical in this moment. Moira put her arms around me and tried to comfort me, and I let her. I just cried. When I calmed down, they repeated, it was real. They loved each other, they wanted to be together. I asked the how, the when, the why. After his breakup, they just felt this spark at that coffee meeting. Before they knew it, the spark was an inferno. They said they tried to fight it, talked about how unfair it was to me, how wrong. Then Sunday, when my wife told me she was meeting a friend to shop. She actually came here to his house, and they made love for the first time. At that point they said there was no going back. They had to face the reality of their love, and that meant they had to come clean to me. I ran at that point. I got in my truck and I returned home. Moira followed behind, without Charles, about 10 minutes later. When she entered I asked, "Why did you follow me? I failed to give you that, and never will be able to." Once I was calm again, she packed 2 large suitcases with most of her stuff. She left that day. She moved in with Charles. In the past week, I have received multiple apologies from both of them. Moira has been trying to check on me, telling me she loves and cares for me, and that she's here if I need her. I've left them mostly ignored. Moira told me she was extremely worried about me and asked for me just to confirm I was physically okay. I did send back yes. Then felt bad about responding. She didn't deserve to know. Both Charles's parents and Moira's parents have called me this week. I answered both calls. The calls were very similar. The gist was they love me, care for me, and are so sorry. They are angry, disappointed, and hurt by their child's actions. They won't cut them off or anything, because they love their child, but they can't look at them right now. My family has been supportive, but they live pretty far away. My mother dropped everything and came to be with me for 3 days, but had to go back for work. My little brother has been checking in, but he has the emotional depth of a tin can. I still appreciate his efforts. I don't know how I'm going to survive this. It has changed my entire outlook on life. How could this happen? We had a great marriage. I know everyone thinks they do, but we really did. I tried, I really tried. Moira has said so many times that I did nothing wrong, that I was everything and more. But this still happened. If you can do everything right and this still happens, then it is inevitable. I'm so hurt. If the 2 most important people in your life can betray you, how can anyone trust anyone? Chapter 2. It's been 2 months since my last post. Thank you to all those who offered support and kind words. I am still reeling. My Eric 28M family is trying their best to support me. Moira 27F still messages some to check on me. She was doing this almost daily and offering apologies and support. After 2 more weeks of that, I finally replied, "Please stop, you're hurting me far more than you're helping." Now she only checks once a week. Monday, just as work was ending, this somewhat official-looking person came in and presented me with divorce papers. I went home and just sat there staring at it for the longest time before opening the envelope. I finally did. I guess you could say she's being generous. I get the house, no split, no buyout. I don't want it. We bought it just 16 months ago. I remember that day, the process. We were so excited, so happy. 3 bedrooms, because when I turned 30 we were going to start having a family. At least 2 kids. The work we did to this place. These walls are the colors she picked out. The his and hers sinks in the bathroom we installed together. I can't keep living here. Too many memories. All the cookouts and game nights with Charles. In my lower moments, I just want to burn it down with me in it. The rest of the stuff in the papers is straightforward. She took all of our small amount of credit card debt. She left me $11,000 of the savings, taking only $3,500. I guess she's trying to literally pay for my pain. Amongst the papers was a note written by her. Another apology and request to talk. Also a warning that her and her brother, Kevin, would be by Tuesday to collect the rest of her things. When I got home after work, they were all there waiting for me. There were 2 trucks. Moira and Kevin were waiting on the front porch. I could see Charles, 28M, was parked across the street and sitting in his truck. I walked up and Moira looked like she was going to cry again. I'm sure I looked terrible. She tried to hug me, but I put my hand up. I pointed towards Charles and said, "What is he doing?" Moira said, "He doesn't feel right coming in and says he has no right to be in your home. We needed him to drive one of the trucks." I shook my head and let them in. Kevin did pull me aside at one point and apologize. Told me he always considered me a brother, that this is a bad deal. He didn't really want to help, but it's his sister, they've always been close. I know he is here because they don't want me making a scene. When they loaded the rest of her personal things, and the few pieces of furniture that were hers from before our marriage, Kevin said, "I'll be right outside." I had spent most of their visit sitting on the backyard slab, thinking about how Charles and I were going to build a deck on this very spot this summer. When I noticed that they appeared to be finishing up, I had gone back in. When Kevin walked out, I thought, here we go, time to dump another 10k tons of pain on me. I wasn't wrong. Moira told me she thinks she is 6 weeks pregnant. She didn't want me finding out from someone else or at a sensitive moment. She felt she owed it to me to tell me herself. I asked, was that an accident or was the waiting until 30 rule only for me? She looked sad. I saw that little quiver in her lip. "We want a family now. I went off birth control the same day I moved in. I'm so sorry for how this all happened." I sat down on the couch. She took a step towards me, then stopped. She turned and went for the front door. So much suffering, I couldn't hold it in. Was I just a placeholder? Is Charles who you always wanted? Did you pick me because it meant you'd get to be around him? I just don't understand. You've been in each other's lives for years. I've never suspected anything. The most he's ever said about you that would lead me to think anything was that I am a lucky man. I just don't get it. I had tears again. She turned and ran back over, putting her hand on my back. She was direct in tone. "No, nothing like that. Nothing had ever happened between us ever. I loved you. You are amazing. This just happened. It just happened. I'm sorry. It's so wrong. But we can't stop. I'm so sorry." At that point she turned and ran out of the house in tears. I'm left here, alone, picking up the pieces of my own shattered life. Chapter 3. I figure most of you have never heard my story. The last post I made is linked at the top. I, Eric 35M, was betrayed by my best friend Charles, 35M, and my then wife Moira, 33F. In the years since then I have tried to move on and have a life. I just can't get past what happened. These two I cared for more than anything else in my life. I was a good friend and a great husband. They even said so themselves. If this can happen despite me doing everything right, how can I ever trust anyone again? I haven't been able to. I have attempted to date a few times. Each time I have sabotaged the relationship from the start. My mind can't help but think the worst. To give an example, I was dating this woman, Amelia. We were really hitting it off in those 3 weeks. She cancelled plans on me late one night, but said she would message me later. I sent a few intrusive texts asking where she was going and why so last minute. She ignores me that night and I have a panic attack. The next day, she asked me out to lunch, and while we were there she told me she felt I came on a little strong and controlling the night before. She had a family situation and it wasn't really my business considering we've only been dating 3 weeks. I broke down a bit and told her I had some past trauma that left me with extreme trust issue. I said I was sorry, but she decided to end things, saying she wasn't in the place for that kind of relationship given her own dealing with past exes. This is pretty much how all my dates end eventually. I don't really have friends anymore. Most of my mutual friends with Charles or Moira chose me and cut them off when the whole situation went down. I was broken though. I didn't want to do much. I appreciated the few pop-ins and calls. I just wasn't the same person. Eventually, I drifted from them all. Some of them even went back to being friends with them. I've done well at work, there's nothing to distract me from work. I am in incredible physical shape. Therapy has not worked, I've been to 3 different therapists. I see my family when I can, but they can only do so much. That brings me to the point of this update. I ran into Charles and Moira. I went to the mall recently, holiday season is usually the only time I ever go there. I came out of a store, turned right, and there they were. 2 sons with them. One looked to be about 5, the other in a stroller about 2. We met eyes, and I froze. Moira just said, "Eric." I turned and went the complete opposite direction at that point. As I was fleeing, I heard a fast approach and Charles yelled, "Eric, wait please." I don't know why, but I stopped. Moira and their 2 kids were still back standing in front of the store. I could see concern on her face. Charles began, "I know it doesn't mean much, but I can't say how sorry I am still. We still think about you, we still hurt for what we did to you. I know you can't forgive us, nor do we deserve it. Let me start over. I ran into your brother, maybe 6 months ago. I asked about you and he had some choice words from me. He was always a hothead, he chuckled and looked at me sheepishly, I think hoping I would respond in any way. He told me that we destroyed you. That you haven't moved on, you have a hard time meeting people, dating. He really chewed into me and told me what a piece of shit I was. I hate seeing you like this, I'm sorry, please get help. You deserve everything and more. Don't let what happened consume the rest of your life, please. He choked up during that last sentence. I had been looking down while I listened, but at that point I decided to look up into his eyes. Are you happy? He looked stunned. Yes, we are happy. But we still hurt for what happened. I said, you hurt? Do you remember how I was really into Reddit? He smiled. Yeah, I do. You used to talk all sorts of stuff, and send us links to all those crazy stories, and funny posts. I continued, I got into all the support for betrayal subs after you both left me, his smile erased. I heard the perfect analogy while in those. Imagine you are riding in the back of car. The 2 people you love and trust the most are in the front. Everything is going fine. Then suddenly they start accelerating really fast, they are swerving all over. Then one slams the gas to the floor while the other yanks the wheel hard to the right. You smash into a tree at full speed. After the accident, the 2 people who wrecked the car get up, walk off, a few minor cuts and bruises. You on the other hand, you're in the ICU. You're not sure you're going to make it. You've lost a limb, your body is destroyed with broken bones and failing organs. It takes years of rehab to even walk again, much less run. But the drivers, they're fine, they feel a little guilty over the wreck, but otherwise they just get to keep on going. That's my reality. You hurt, fine, I will never be the same. No amount of counseling, no amount of time will ever be enough, and believe me, I've tried. Remember that the next you're hurting over what happened, it's not what happened, it's what you both did to me. I walked away at that point. They didn't follow, didn't try to talk. Just another day in hell. Chapter 4. I, Eric 59M, attended my 40-year high school reunion. I can't believe that much time has passed. I have so little to show for it. I have money, and that's about it. I could retire any moment, but I don't, because then I don't know what I would do with myself. I gave up on finding someone a long time ago. After my last post, linked above, I sulked for 2 more years. My family was pressuring me to get out there. So I did. I was wealthy, I was fit. I had no trouble meeting women. I just didn't feel anything for them. We would date for a while. I wouldn't freak out like I used to, I just wouldn't commit to anything. Not really, anyway, I always kept myself closed off, sex was fine, feelings weren't. They'd always pick up on this and things would end. As I passed 40, my family really intervened. It seemed like everyone in my life, which wasn't many people, wanted to set me up with the future Mrs. Stan, my last name. I realized I should try. I met a woman, Trish. She was nice and driven. I put the effort in to act like I thought I should. She was no dummy though, she could tell I wasn't really in. It came to a head in a big argument about a year in. That was my last relationship, 16 years ago. My little brother died 2 years ago. I still miss him. My parents have been gone for a few years now too. I think these are the things that made me go to the reunion in the first place. After all this time, I needed to socialize, if even for an only night. I was not going to go at all out of fear that Charles, 59M, and Moira, 57F, would be there. But I got over it. For the most part it was relatively tame evening. I conversed with a few people I remembered from high school, but mostly spent a large amount of time sitting at a table by myself. As the night went on, Dukes came by and sat next to me. We weren't close friends back in HS, but he was always friendly, man could talk to anyone. That's probably why he took up the mantle of organizing this thing. Dukes, man, Eric, you've barely aged a day it seems. We're all pushing 60 and you look like you're south of 40. Me, yeah, I hear that all the time. I take care of myself, and I'm lucky, I can't remember the last time I was sick. Dukes, guess old Chuck couldn't make it after all? I looked at him a little surprised. I guess not, we haven't spoken in some time now, was he supposed to? Dukes, oh, my apologies, I remembered you two were tight back in the day, I figured you still were since he called me to ask if you had RSVP'd. Me, he did? Did he say anything else? Dukes, not much, just wanted to see if you had, said he was deciding if he was coming, and wanted to see what your status was before he committed, had me put him down as maybe. I knew now he wouldn't show. We had ran into each other one other time about 10 years ago, and that time we both turned and ran away. Dukes continued, well, he's doing well for himself. I saw on Facebook he got a couple of grandkids now, and is closing in on retirement. Good for him. This is where I went pain shopping. I don't, have social media. Can you show me how Charles is doing? Like I said, we lost touch a few years back. Dukes, oh, yeah, let's check it out. He pulled his phone out and clicked on the app, searched for Charles. Then he saw someone in the crowd. He just handed me his phone and said, have a look, I need to go talk to somebody, I'll come back over in a minute or two. I thanked him, then scrolled. He was gone for 10 minutes or so. In that time I saw a lot. Years of smiling photos, holidays, and vacations. They had 3 kids and 2 grandkids, and their daughter was currently pregnant with twins. Saw my ex-in-laws. Birthday messages. My once upon a time FIL had a post calling Charles the best son-in-law a man could ask for. I saw events and parties with old friends. It was the life I was supposed to have. I left shortly after. A few days later I got a call from Dukes. He was apologizing profusely for his faux pas in bringing up Charles. I guess after I left, someone who was in the know told him what had gone on between Charles and I. Dukes was a nice man. He didn't have to call, but he did. He ended the call like everyone always does, if you need anything don't hesitate to ask. Like everyone else who hears this, there was never anything to ask for, because no one can make your memories go away or stop your heart from hurting. They say time heals all, but for me, time just makes it worse. Chapter 5. I can't believe even after all this time, they still find ways to pop back into my life. It's been a lot of years since I updated this post. A part of the story permanently ended recently. I, Eric 76M, live a very routine life. I have been mostly alone for the last 48 years. I made a ton of money by being a workaholic, and rarely spending any of it. I still work out regularly, and often get mistaken for a man in his early 50s. I awoke this morning, had breakfast, worked out, watched a movie. This is typical. On most days I go for a walk around noon, especially here in February when it's colder. I leave out of my apartment and head towards a cemetery nearby. I like walking the paths and enjoying the peace. Sometimes when I walk there's a service going on. I always take paths that go around or away from the services. This cemetery is rather large and has a number of single-lane roads going through its grounds. Often when a service is going on, the local funeral homes will put small signs with the deceased's last name on them so that those coming know which way to turn. As I entered and prepared to walk down my usual paths, I noticed the sign said Francis on it. That is the last name of my former best friend Charles, 76M. I decided to walk down that path towards the service. I was not dressed for it, not in my red track suit. But curiosity was winning this day. I came up on the scene just as it must have ended. People were getting back into cars and heading back towards me as they exited. I could see a large group, probably immediate family, standing around consoling each other. I just stood and watched from a distance. Though I was a little ways out, my eyes have always been perfect. I could see that the matriarch of the group was my ex-wife Moira. I hadn't so much as seen a picture of her in 15 years, but that was without a doubt a 75-year-old version of her. They got her in the car, and we're coming this way. As it went by, I stared into the cabin. The car went a few feet past me and came to a sudden stop. Moira appeared from the back passenger side. She looked at me with tears in her eye. "Eric? You've barely aged a day. I can't believe you came. Thank you." She rushed forward as quick as she could and threw her arms around me. I put mine around her. I was caught off guard by the gesture and just kind of went with it out of reflex. I don't think I had ever felt more awkward. I whispered in her ear warmly, "Moira?" She looked up at me, and our eyes locked in. I kissed her, and she kissed me back, warm and tender. Then she snapped out of it, and gasped audibly. She stepped back, eyes filling with tears. She said the words I never wanted to hear again, for I heard them far too many times, "I'm so sorry." Then she scurried into the car. I thought to myself, "Charles, I hope you were looking down just now. With any luck I will be her last kiss. Take that, you dead fuck." I was about to turn and walk away when the driver got out and approached. He walked up, hand extended. I shook it. The man said, "Eric, right? I'm Scott, my mother's oldest. I don't know how to say this. I know all about your history with my parents. I want you to know they never stopped regretting, at least to some degree, what happened between you all. I hope you'll forgive my mother for her behavior just now. She's been hearing your name for the last few years. My father had dementia towards the end, and she has been enduring him asking where her husband Eric is at for the past couple years, and if he'll be back soon. Seeing you today was unexpected and a lot for her. So I'm sorry, he's gone now and she's grieving, you understand, right?" I met his eyes. "My boy, I understand all too well what it's like to lose your spouse and best friend in one moment." With that I turned and continued my walk down the path. With everyone gone, I stopped by the headstone. It read, "In loving memory, Charles P. Francis. The 10th of June, 1995 to the 14th of February, 2072. Beloved husband and father." I feel like that bottom line should say treacherous bastard and backstabber, but no one asked me. I entertained the thought of coming back at night and pissing on his grave, but I won't. The knowledge that I haunted him for the last of his days will be comfort enough. Chapter 6. Today is the 10-year anniversary of Moira's passing. I, Eric 99M, actually took the effort to print out her obituary. Moira Mackenzie Francis passed away after a long battle with breast cancer on May 5, 2085 at the age of 88. She was born to Sean and Teresa Thomas. After college, she became a teacher, and later had a long and prominent career as the superintendent of schools for the Worcestershire School District. Moira was married to Charles P. Francis from January 1, 2025 to his passing on the 14th of February, 2072. She is survived by her 3 children, Scott, Henry, and Jeannie. Her 6 grandchildren, Warren, Robert, Alex, Lorna, Aurora, and Kurt. And her 8 great-grandchildren, Logan, Sean, Rachel, Bishop, Elizabeth, Catherine, Allison, and Peter. Moira loved to spend time with her family and volunteer throughout the community. Services will be held at Wilson Funeral Home on May 8 at 10 a.m. She will be laid to rest next to her husband at Frost Cemetery. I have read this thing way too many times over the last decade. I let it haunt me to some degree. I've wallowed in sadness for 70 years because of her and Charles. Recently, that turned to anger. Ancestry DNA kits had a super sale, 90% off for anyone over 90. I thought, what the hell? I matched with one of my brother's kids. I should have maintained a relationship with them. They moved several states away, but looking back now this is just another regret. I had a few other matches, including a cousin I didn't know who lives in Hawaii. But the most painful thing I read in my entire report was a match with two teen girls here in my city. Their names are Rachel and Liz Francis. Scott was mine. She lied to me. 70 fucking years. She told me she was 6 weeks along. I still remember that day. I still remember the pain thinking 2 months ago I was married to this woman and now she is 6 weeks along with my best friend's kid. She wasn't, she lied. I met with Rachel, Liz, and briefly with Warren recently. Warren was still having some trouble processing the whole reality of it all. He loved his grandparents. Now knowing the truth has him a bit in disbelief, but he did say he would like to visit me and find out more in the future. The girls have another sister named Ali, but she didn't meet with me. She's young, only 11 years old, so I understand. I got the usual from the girls, there's no way you are 100 years old. You look younger than our grandpa did when he died. Yes, my son died 2 years ago at the age of 68 from cancer. I'm at least thankful I got to shake his hand that day 23 years ago. The girls told me all about themselves, their parents, aunts, uncles, cousins. They have some memories of Moira. Knowing what she did now, I sped them through that part because my memories of her are full of disdain again. Rachel is actually leaving for college soon. Liz plans to join her there in 2 years. We parted ways, but they both promised to see me again before school started. I was happy that day. I haven't been happy very much in the last 70 years. I was also angry. I never forgave them for what they did, but goddamn I would have killed them myself if I had known they were hiding my son from me. Nothing I can do now, of course. I do hope Warren meets with me again, and brings his brother Robert and my only great-grandson and eldest great-grandchild Logan. It's the first thing I've looked forward to in a long time. Chapter 6. Today is the 10-year anniversary of Moira's passing. I, Eric 99M, actually took the effort to print out her obituary. Moira Mackenzie Francis passed away after a long battle with breast cancer on May 5, 2085 at the age of 88. She was born to Sean and Teresa Thomas. After college, she became a teacher, and later had a long and prominent career as the superintendent of schools for the Worcestershire School District. Moira was married to Charles P. Francis from January 1, 2025 to his passing on the 14th of February, 2072. She is survived by her 3 children, Scott, Henry, and Jeannie. Her 6 grandchildren, Warren, Robert, Alex, Lorna, Aurora, and Kurt. And her 8 great-grandchildren, Logan, Sean, Rachel, Bishop, Elizabeth, Catherine, Allison, and Peter. Moira loved to spend time with her family and volunteer throughout the community. Services will be held at Wilson Funeral Home on May 8 at 10 a.m. She will be laid to rest next to her husband at Frost Cemetery. I have read this thing way too many times over the last decade. I let it haunt me to some degree. I've wallowed in sadness for 70 years because of her and Charles. Recently, that turned to anger. Ancestry DNA kits had a super sale, 90% off for anyone over 90. I thought, what the hell? I matched with one of my brother's kids. I should have maintained a relationship with them. They moved several states away, but looking back now this is just another regret. I had a few other matches, including a cousin I didn't know who lives in Hawaii. But the most painful thing I read in my entire report was a match with 2 teen girls here in my city. Their names are Rachel and Liz Francis. Scott was mine. She lied to me. 70 fucking years. She told me she was 6 weeks along. I still remember that day. I still remember the pain thinking 2 months ago I was married to this woman and now she is 6 weeks along with my best friend's kid. She wasn't, she lied. I met with Rachel, Liz, and briefly with Warren recently. Warren was still having some trouble processing the whole reality of it all. He loved his grandparents. Now knowing the truth has him a bit in disbelief, but he did say he would like to visit me and find out more in the future. The girls have another sister named Ali, but she didn't meet with me. She's young, only 11 years old, so I understand. I got the usual from the girls. There's no way you are 100 years old. You look younger than our grandpa did when he died. Yes, my son died 2 years ago at the age of 68 from cancer. I'm at least thankful I got to shake his hand that day 23 years ago. The girls told me all about themselves, their parents, aunts, uncles, cousins. They have some memories of Moira. Knowing what she did now, I sped them through that part because my memories of her are full of disdain again. Rachel is actually leaving for college soon. Liz plans to join her there in 2 years. We parted ways, but they both promised to see me again before school started. I was happy that day. I haven't been happy very much in the last 70 years. I was also angry. I never forgave them for what they did, but goddamn I would have killed them myself if I had known they were hiding my son from me. Nothing I can do now, of course. I do hope Warren meets with me again, and brings his brother Robert and my only great-grandson and eldest great-grandchild Logan. It's the first thing I've looked forward to in a long time. The end. Like and subscribe for more.